Imagine stepping into the opulent world of 17th century France, where the Palace of Versailles stood as a testament to unparalleled grandeur. Gilded halls shimmered, chandeliers sparkled with dazzling light, and luxurious silks and satins adorned every surface. Yet, beneath this veneer of extravagance, a shocking reality existed, a pervasive, unpleasant odor that would make even the most robust flowers wilt. This was Versailles, a place where breathtaking beauty starkly contrasted with an astonishing lack of basic hygiene, particularly for the royal women who, despite their jewels and titles, endured unimaginable living conditions. The unthinkable truths of royal hygiene. We're about to delve into the astonishingly unsanitary daily lives of noblewomen at the zenith of French royal power, uncovering 5 truly shocking hygiene practices that defy modern comprehension. The aversion to water, bathing as a taboo. For women of noble birth in 17th century France, grace, charm, and impeccable fashion were paramount. However, when it came to personal cleanliness, their practices took a disturbing turn. The very act we associate with hygiene today, bathing, was largely shunned, almost as if it were a perilous plague. The scientific understanding of the era was misguided. Doctors firmly believed that warm water was detrimental to health, thinking it opened pores and invited unseen diseases. This medical misconception was further reinforced by the Church, which viewed bathing as a sinful act of vanity and temptation. Consequently, an entire culture turned its back on water. Royal women did not enjoy private baths or the luxury of daily showers. In fact, a full body wash was a rare event, considered risky or even immoral. Instead, most noblewomen would use a damp cloth, often moistened with alcohol, vinegar, or even saliva, to wipe their hands, faces, and perhaps their necks. This method supposedly cleaned without overly exposing the skin. When a bath was taken, which was infrequent, it was typically a communal affair. Families would share the same tub of water, one after another, with men taking precedence. By the time a woman entered the tub, the water would be lukewarm, murky, and filled with grime. This widespread avoidance of bathing contributed significantly to the pervasive stench that permeated Versailles, a jarring mix of stale perfume, body odor, animal fat, and mildew. Despite their efforts to maintain appearances, often covered in silks, jewels, and powders, their underlying skin had likely not seen soap in months, a cruel paradox of looking magnificent from a distance, but far from it up close. The palace's open-air toilets, a systemic issue. Beyond the shocking lack of bathing, another fundamental aspect of hygiene we now take for granted was virtually non-existent: proper toilets. The Palace of Versailles, a masterpiece of architecture and a beacon of European luxury, boasted almost no functioning latrines. With hundreds of rooms and thousands of occupants, the royal court relied heavily on chamber pots, small, portable bowls placed discreetly under beds, behind curtains, or in closets. When nature called, one used the pot, and its contents were often unceremoniously tossed out of windows. Unfortunate winds or crowded streets sometimes led to unpleasant surprises below. Some courtiers didn't even bother with pots. Men were known to relieve themselves from balconies or directly in the palace gardens. Visitors and foreign dignitaries were appalled by the widespread lack of sanitation. It wasn't just isolated incidents, it was a systemic problem. The palace became infamous for its overwhelming stench, its corridors often serving as impromptu latrines. Imagine a lady gracefully gliding through the halls in her elaborate gown, carefully lifting her skirts not just to display embroidery, but to avoid stepping in human waste. The situation became so dire that by 1715, a royal decree was issued, mandating that the palace corridors be cleaned once a week, a measure considered an improvement at the time. Furthermore, modern toilet paper was non-existent. People resorted to using cloth scraps, leaves, straw, or, in desperate situations, their own hands. Minimal, if any, washing followed. With such crude waste disposal and cleaning methods, It's no wonder that parasites and diseases were rampant throughout the palace. The high-rise horrors, wigs, lice, and animal fat. If Versailles was the epicenter of European fashion, its most vibrant pulse beat in the elaborate wigs and towering hairstyles of royal women. These weren't mere hairdos, they were architectural marvels, often rising feet above the head, adorned with ribbons, pearls, miniature gardens, and even tiny ship replicas. To achieve such impressive scale, women's hair was stuffed with wire frames, horsehair, wool, or cotton padding. Following this, liberal amounts of pomade, made from animal fat, particularly beef tallow, were applied to mold and hold the style in place. However, this greasy concoction created a warm, sticky, and highly inviting environment for lice. Since royal women rarely washed their hair and certainly didn't dismantle their elaborate wigs for casual cleaning, lice infestations were not just common, they were an expected part of court life. Entire colonies of these tiny creatures thrived within the towering styles. Ladies of the court carried special tools, long-handled silver lice claws, to discreetly scratch their itchy scalps without disturbing their meticulously crafted hairdos. These ornate claws were even brought to dinners and social events, where a woman might pause between sips of wine to scratch her head. Despite the discomfort and unsanitary conditions, no one dared to appear unfashionable. In the rigid hierarchy of court life, appearance was power, and a perceived lapse in fashion could lead to a loss of status. Even with a scalp crawling with lice and hair reeking of old fat, the show had to continue. Beyond the unsanitary aspects, these wigs were also dangerous. Some were so heavy they caused chronic neck pain, while others caught fire from nearby candles. For noblewomen, their elaborate hair was their crown, even if it concealed a thriving ecosystem beneath. The unsavory banquets, food, filth, and parasites. Royal banquets were legendary affairs, tables groaning under the weight of meat pies, pastries, roasted pheasants, and sugared fruits. Yet behind this lavish display lay a grim and stomach-churning reality. The royal kitchens were far from immune to the palace's sanitation problems. In fact, they often bore the brunt of them. The plumbing system at Versailles was so deficient that raw sewage occasionally backed up into the cooking areas. There are even reports of wastewater reaching the private kitchen of Queen Marie Antoinette. Impact on food safety was devastating. Without proper refrigeration, ventilation, or waste removal, contamination was rampant. Meat spoiled quickly, fruits and vegetables were left exposed for days, and pests roamed freely. Despite these hazards, cooks had no choice but to continue serving potentially dangerous meals to the highest ranks of society. The consequences were widespread. Gastrointestinal distress, diarrhea, vomiting, and infections were common. Most horrifying were the parasites. Royal courtiers frequently suffered from intestinal worms, particularly tapeworms, due to undercooked meats and filthy kitchen conditions. Even King Louis XIV himself was not spared, reportedly passing a 6-inch tapeworm, a stark reminder that even the most powerful man in France was not immune to the consequences of poor hygiene. For the women of the court, dining was a delicate performance of grace and conversation, yet many silently battled nausea, cramps, and more serious illnesses to maintain appearances. The public agony of childbirth, a spectacle of suffering. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most intimate and painful aspect of a woman's life, childbirth. For royal women, it wasn't just painful, it was a profoundly public event. In 17th century France, when a queen or high-ranking noblewoman went into labor, it was considered a national spectacle. The delivery room would be packed with courtiers, doctors, priests, and noble observers, all there to witness, not to assist or support. When Queen Marie Thérèse gave birth, the room was so crowded it resembled a theater. The reason for this public display was to prevent scandal. People feared that a stillborn or female baby might be secretly replaced with a healthy male heir. Thus, the entire process had to occur in full view. This meant the mother, often in excruciating pain and emotional distress, was surrounded by an audience during one of the most vulnerable moments of her life, with no privacy or dignity, only immense expectation. Marie Antoinette famously fainted after giving birth, overwhelmed by the oppressive heat and the throng of people in her chamber. She was not alone. Many women fainted, cried, or suffered complications while being watched like a performance on stage. Childbirth itself was fraught with danger, given limited medical knowledge and no access to antibiotics. 1 in 3 children died before the age of 3, and mothers faced high mortality rates, often from infections caused by unwashed hands and unsterile tools. So, while royal births were moments of national celebration, they were also marked by immense fear and profound physical and emotional suffering for the women who endured them under such intense public scrutiny. Beneath the glittering gowns, perfumed halls, and jeweled crowns, royal women at Versailles lived lives filled with discomfort, indignity, and dangers that would make modern readers recoil. They presented an image of grace and sophistication in public, but in private, they scratched, suffered, and survived in ways history often overlooks. The true story of royal life was far messier and profoundly more human than the fairy tale portrayals.